Hey guys, I just want to get to these questions real quick, and I'm going to try to organize them into shorter videos so people will actually watch them. Um, so, just one thing I just want to say: there was multiple questions this time about age limits for the president of the United States, and the simple answer to that question is I'm not really sure how you implement that at the federal level without amending the Constitution, since the requirements for the president are set in the Constitution, and while I, on a personal level, agree that we need to start taking into account the age of a president. I mean, Joe Biden will be in his 80s if he wins election in 2024, if he actually runs. And is that really representative of the population overall? Are we better off with somebody more in their 40s to 60s as being more reflective of what the population needs? Also, some of the challenges that we faced. If you ever want to see something pretty embarrassing, watch members of the Senate who are in their 60s and 70s talk about Twitter and TikTok and things like that. It's pretty obvious they have no idea, or not very in tune with some of the technological issues that we face, which also play a huge role in presidential politics. So there's a lot of things to be concerned about. In regards to the age minimums on things, that generally has been upheld and not doesn't seem to bother people as much because there's a maturity aspect about brain development and all kinds of things that can go into, how if somebody's capable of holding office at 25 or 30 for the Senate or 35 for the presidency. So those are great questions, but as of right now, it's probably going to be a while before you see a limit, even though that might limiting that may be in the best interest of the republic overall. Okay, another good question that we got was in regards to what does it mean to be a natural born citizen in the 14-year, element of being qualifications to be president of the United States. So, um, in general, according to legal scholarship, what it means to be a natural born citizen is that you were a citizen of the United States at birth and you did not have to go through a naturalization process to become president of the United States. So if you're born anywhere that makes you a U.S. citizen, you are considered a natural born citizen. Also, the 14 years of residence. I had one of you asked a great question about what does that mean. That was confusing. If you're born somewhere else that makes you a natural born citizen, like a U.S. territory or a military base or something like that, but you need to have been living in the United States for at least 14 years before you could become president. So you couldn't be a natural born citizen, live somewhere else your whole life, and then move back to the United States for 1 year and run for president. You'd have to have been there for 14. So that's a great question. Another question that I received has to do with whether or not presidential debates make a big difference in presidential campaigns, and they don't always make a huge difference, but we've definitely had some moments where they have made a big difference. The first presidential debate ever televised in 1960 between Kennedy and Nixon, people who, it's always interesting because the people who listened to the debate thought that Nixon had won, and the people that watched the debate thought that Kennedy had done, and it kind of transformed how we understood what television was going to do in presidential politics moving forward. Some other elections that we've had where things were definitely sort of like tilted one way or another. Reagan and Carter had a couple of good moments in some of their debates where things kind of tilted a little bit. Mitt Romney versus Obama. In the first debate, Mitt Romney came out in 2012 and he did a really good job against Obama, and there was a noticeable tick or switch over towards Mitt Romney when that happened. But it did not end up holding, obviously, as Obama got reelected. So it can make a difference. Usually the first one is going to be the one that really makes a difference because that's when you're meeting probably the most new voters that maybe haven't made up their mind yet. But usually by the time you get to the third debate, things like that, many more people have kind of already decided. But if there is a chance to strike a really good blow to your opponent in a presidential debate, it's usually that first one, and it can swing things a couple of points. Whether or not you hold that lead is a different conversation. Now, one thing, I'll try to wrap this up pretty quick to keep this. I'm trying to keep these around 5 or 6 minutes per question section. Got a lot of questions about impeachment, and there appears to be confusion from the material. So let me be very clear about something. When you think of impeachment, think of it as the House is sort of like the grand jury, and the Senate is the regular jury trial where you may go to jail or you may get sentenced to 10 years in prison or whatever. That's a good way of thinking about impeachment. Impeachment can only begin in the House of Representatives, but if you get impeached in the House, which is what happened to Trump twice, what happened to Andrew Johnson once, and what happened to Bill Clinton, if you get impeached in the House, at that point you have been impeached. So historically, they say Donald Trump was impeached, Bill Clinton was impeached. At that point, you've been impeached, but it takes getting convicted in the Senate to get actually removed from office or potentially barred from not only removed from office, but potentially being barred from having holding federal office again, depending on what the nature of your crimes were. A lot of people think Nixon was impeached. Nixon was not impeached. Nixon resigned the office because basically his own party came to him and said, if you do not resign, we are going to convict you in the Senate, and you may have even legal problems after that. And he resigned the office, and that's when Ford, his vice president, ended up pardoning him. And that probably, some people feel that caused Ford the 76 election against Jimmy Carter. So there appears to be confusion through multiple questions, but impeachment is, once you have been convicted in the House, you have been impeached. And in order to get removed from office, you have to get convicted in the Senate. That has never happened to an American president. The only people that's ever happened to were federal judges, and they all got convicted in the Senate. There's about 8 or 9 of them. All right? Great questions.